Welcome to Rule Your Results. This is Paul Evans from paulbevans.com. And I love the focus of this particular training because it's brought me more success than anything else in life. It's being able to control outcomes. Now, I call this a brutally simple system for unreasonable achievement. And the reason that it is so brutal is that it requires us to do what we say we're going to do. I recently wrote an article called Are You an Action Talker or an Action Taker? And it's so easy to fill ourselves up with ideas, with thoughts, with good intentions, and then to get totally sidetracked or spend all of our time in the planning phase, but not in the actual action and doing phase. And then when we get into the action and doing phase, guess what happens? We end up not being able to finish either because of a lack of momentum, but usually because we didn't realize ahead of time how long this was going to take, how difficult it was going to be. And so with some simple adjustments, we're going to be able to really rule the results of our life. So let's start there and talk about the difference between goals and results. The goals are the desired destination. It's where we want to end up. It's that end result, whether it's making money online or losing the final 10 pounds. That's the desired destination. It's what I want. It's what I dream about. It's what I believe I am supposed to attain. Now, results reveal the actual destination. And that's an important difference because we don't always reach our goal exactly like we thought we would. And that's the reason that most of us pull back or we get discouraged or we end up not going forward is because what was in our mind and what happened in our life are not in complete agreement. But when we can look at the actual destination, when we can look at what we actually achieved, then it can help us keep going. So that's our end result. Let's say that we're going to lose 10 pounds and we lost 6. It doesn't mean that all's lost. We've learned a lot in that process of what it would take to actually lose that 6. Was it what I really wanted? Was it what I desired? No. But here's what's actual. And we can work with actuals. We can work with facts. We can work with figures. We can work with the result and then achieve it again and again and again. What we can't work with is a goal that we quit on because we never look at our actual results and our actual accomplishments because we're too down about what we did not achieve. So we're going to look at 4 rules of results. Results happen and rules happen because values and behaviors get in conflict. And so when our values conflict with behaviors and behaviors conflict with our values, we make rules. That's what happens in our society. And rules are to help keep us straight. They're to help us behave. And I know a little bit about that because I was always the kid who was in trouble. I was the kid that was told by the babysitter told my mom, don't bring him back. The barber said, don't bring him back. Why? Because I did not do real well with these boundaries. And even to this day, I have a hard time with boundaries. And that's why it's even more important for somebody like me to have rules when it comes to life and business to keep me on track. Otherwise, I'll be out there just going crazy, just doing whatever, whenever, and not having any measurable result from it. Entrepreneurs tend to be that way. It's not that we think that rules don't count. We're just not sure that they apply to us. And so when it comes to our work, we love the dream. We love the idea. We love the next thing. We love activity, even if it doesn't bring the end result. So we've got to have rules that are going to help us achieve that goal. So rule number 1, and this is really to me the most critical rule, control your time and you control your destiny. Everything hinges on our ability to control what we do and when we do it. Now, all of us don't have time control like crazy. In fact, none of us do, actually. There's a lot of time that's controlled by other people that maybe we're not even thinking about, we're not even focused on. But if we'll control our time, we can control our destiny. And that's rule number 1, is to get really acclimated with our time. Now, I actually learned this from my son. That's him on the left. The boy on the right is a young man that we sponsored down in Cozumel, Mexico. His name is Jose. We get to go down and visit with him a few times a year, so it's pretty exciting. Now, Stephen is wired differently from me. Now, he is somewhat creative, but for the most part, he's very pragmatic. And he gets these time locks in his mind. And I know this is a few years ago, and it really helped me in my own business and my own thinking. So I would say to Stephen, if he was playing a video game, as a parent, I would say, hey, are you going to do your homework? Have you done your homework yet? And he would say, well, I'm going to do my homework at 6. And of course, I thought, right, yeah, he's really going to do his homework at 6. We'll see what happens. But it didn't even matter if he was in the middle of a video game that he was playing with friends. At 6 o'clock, he had cut off that video game and he'd go do his homework. So I thought that was pretty cool. But then later, I was talking to him about doing homework and said, well, do you do your homework from like 6 to 8 at night? And he said, well, it really depends. Like if it's my history homework and I've got X assignment, I know that that's going to take me about 45 minutes. So he wasn't simply setting aside time to do his homework. He actually knew how much time each homework assignment was going to take him, at least roughly. So he was really controlling his time. And that helped me to understand what needed to be done. And actually in Rule 2, we'll dive into that even deeper. But let's look closer at Rule 1. Number 1 is fixed time. That's time that is controlled by other people. And that's important to really navigate and to really think about. Because whether it's work or family or friends or events, it's fixed. It's controlled by other people. Now, here in the South, we're kind of known as the Bible Belt, so a lot of people go to church. So church is actually on their fixed element. Those of you who have kids who play sports, their sporting schedule, their practice schedule is part of your fixed time. You don't really get out of that. You don't really get to control that. And that's just part of life. We don't need to begrudge that. We don't need to be upset about it. It's where we are at this stage. If you work a full-time job, it's part of your fixed time. There's nothing that can be done about that right now. In our mind, we tend to think, well, if I had all the time I wanted, then I could really get things done. It's not true because you still have to control the time regardless. And what a lot of people do with extra time is not schedule it. So the fixed time, don't begrudge it, just know where it is. Secondly is flow time, and that is time that's controlled by you. You've got the say in it. You have the right to say, this is what I'm going to do, this is when I'm going to do it. And you also have the right to tell other people that they don't get to infringe on that time. That's a pretty important concept. So that your flow time is not only controlled by you in that you get to schedule it, it's also controlled by you in that you get to tell other people they don't have a right, unless it's an emergency, they don't have a right to infringe on it. So we've got to be careful with that. But we need to be able to know what our flow time is and use it accordingly. Chances are your flow time is the least amount of time that you have during your day. So that's why it's critical when we are scheduling toward that goal and we want that result that we consider this time precious, that we don't want to waste it, that we don't simply do whatever, whenever, because we know that we just don't have much of it. So we've got to find out how much time we have. So we've got to actually record this and look at it. So let's say that you would get just a weekly schedule like this, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., let's say, and everything that I have in green would be flow time, and everything in red would be fixed time. So if you get up in the morning and from 8 to say 8:30 or 8:15, you get to control that time. You're not getting ready for work. You're not doing anything other than what you want to do. You're not getting breakfast ready for the family. This is your time. Now, I'm able to do that pretty easily because I get up early. I might wake up at 4 a.m. So I've got a couple of hours before anybody around here stirs at all, right? So it's pretty easy for me to schedule that flow time early on because it's not really going to compete with, quote, the day. Then let's say starting at 8:15 up till about noon, it's fixed. You've got to get ready. You get other people ready in the household, maybe, let's say. You've got your commute, whatever it is. And, that might be a stretch right there at 8:15. All that may start at 7:30, may start at 7, but it's your fixed time, so you need to block this out. Then from noon to 1, maybe this is your lunch break at work, and it really is your flow time. You get to control it. So you could work on your business. You can work on your goal then. Now, I'm not saying do that every single day. That's what we tend to do. We tend to say, well, there's my flow time. I'm going to put that in every day. Well, you need to eat lunch with coworkers, and you need to eat lunch with friends. So that doesn't always have to be blocked. And then you've got your work afternoon, and you've got getting home, and then maybe when you walk in the door, you get an hour. I don't know. May not. Then from 7 to 8:30 or so, it's another fixed block. And then after that, maybe it's a flow block. But you do need to get a calendar out like this and actually write down where your time is spent, because you need to see how much time you actually get to control. Because if you find out that you've only got 1 hour or 2 hours of flow time a day, then getting on Twitter, getting on Facebook just for fun suddenly doesn't seem as important. Maybe you go, okay, I'm going to do that for 15 minutes. But you see how little time you actually have, and that will force you to make sure you're using your time wisely. So you've got fixed time that's controlled by others, and you have flow time controlled by you. Make sure you map that out, because when you control your time, you control your destiny. Rule number 2, control your thoughts. Control your thoughts. Before we ever get to planning things, we've got to think about what we think about. We've got to focus on what's going through our mind and how we're going to manage that. And it's not always easy. So instead of letting your mind wander, you've got to get aggressive with your head. You've got to stop letting just anything in. You've got to be selective. Stop letting it go where it wants to go all the time. And that's not easy, because we tend to be thinkers. We tend to be dreamers. And so we want to allow our mind to float a lot. But we've really got to get aggressive, or what's coming into our mind will derail us. So if we're not controlling our thoughts, when that email for that offer hits our inbox, guess what? We're gone. Even if we're supposed to be working. If we are online and suddenly we have a notice that we got a Facebook message, what happens? We go after it. So focusing on your goal requires taking your thoughts captive. You can't afford to get distracted. When you waste time, you waste momentum. And remember, when you control your time, you control your destiny. So when we waste time, we've got to think, I'm giving up part of my destiny. I'm giving up my destination. I'm giving up what I really want in the future to just capture a little bit of a desire right now. So when you're writing an article and you hear your email alarm, your messenger bong, your social media alert, and you actually follow like Pavlov's dog, you're not controlling your thoughts. They're controlling you. So you have to really think before acting, and you've got to make that decision before you do anything else. So we've got a few rules about this. You need to think specifically. Concentrate on being precise. So let's say that you're moving on goal X and you're taking action Y. How exactly will Y help you achieve X? The reason this is important is that this now becomes the filter. So let's say that you're writing an article for your blog, and you say specifically that this is going to be a shareable article that people will feel free and excited about telling other people about, then you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. So when that alert hits, then you'll automatically know this is not part of writing this article. This is not part of what is shareable. This is not what's going to grow my list. This is not what's going to grow my income. And once you train yourself that way, then the interruptions will not bother you as much. Right now, we're trained to respond rapidly to any time there's an email or a notification. But instead, when we think specifically about what we're working on and why we're working on it, then it becomes a filter and we don't let other things interfere. Secondly, think profitably. Concentrate on current action and complete it. That way you can lay down at night knowing you've been productive. You can rest in the confidence that the day was not a waste, but profitable towards your goals. I believe that completing whatever the task is super important. Let's say that you've got just minimal flow time and you're working on that article for your blog. You may only be able to come up with the title and 2 paragraphs today, but that's all right, because that's still success. You're moving profitably toward your goal. So when you lay down at night, you can say, yeah, I've been productive. But what happens when you've got that minimum goal And I'm not even talking about maximum. I'm not saying let's sit down and write 10 articles. I'm saying let's come up with a title and write 2 paragraphs. So if you've got a minimal goal for the day and you allow Facebook or email to distract, guess what? Boom, it knocks you out. Or if you take that call from a friend, even though it's during your flow time, and you've made it fixed by you, and a friend calls and you allow the interruption, and you know it's not an emergency because they call you about every day just to chat, then you got to be careful with that, right? So we got to think profitably. Is this action going to take me closer or farther away from my goal? When you hear the notification, your question can be, is this going to take me closer or farther away from my goal? Think directionally. Concentrate on your internal GPS. Where do you want to go? What will it look like when you get there? What will it take to get there? Your GPS should become your guide and filter for any diversions or side roads. So you've got to have that clear picture of the end result. Now, the danger in this is that we often picture the end result perfectly. So we lose the perfect 10 pounds and we make the perfect $1 million. And we don't picture the sidetracks along the way. Like when I'm thinking about losing 10 pounds, I don't daydream about Five Guys and donuts and bacon as part of my process. When I sit down and think about losing that 10 pounds, I see myself working out. I see grilled chicken on my plate. All right, so I see all those things. That's part of my GPS. That's part of the roadmap and the direction of where I want to go and how I want to get there. But what happens along the way in real life? In real life, I didn't get to that meal that was kind of critical to keep me from feeling hungry, and I'm riding down the road and I see Five Guys or I see Krispy Kreme. Or I didn't really think about that mound of bacon sitting on that plate when I walked into the kitchen. I didn't know it was going to be there, because that wasn't part of my plan. It's pretty easy for me to be sidetracked by that, right? Now, what if part of my planning, part of my thinking was knowing that I was going to be up against those things, that I knew those distractions were going to come? Well, that's totally different, right? So when we're thinking directionally, we don't simply need to think in terms of I'm going from A to B and I'm not going to encounter a single issue along the way. We need to go ahead and think directionally and know that there are going to be issues at the same time. And most of those issues really are fought more in the mind than anywhere else, because we start getting weak and we start thinking that we should, we've been working so hard, we deserve a little bit of a reward, and this one thing ain't going to hurt me, and this one thing is not going to derail me. So we've got to be focused and we've got to be thinking. So think specifically, think profitably, think directionally, and you'll control your thoughts. Rule number 3, control your actions. So fixed time is controlled by somebody else. Flow time is controlled by you. Your fixed actions are controlled by another, but your flow actions are controlled by you. Now, what's strange is what takes place with fixed actions. Things become autopilot, almost like a zombie. And so we think that our flow actions are all that matter in our life and our business. And so we get on autopilot with our fixed actions. So our going to work becomes rote. Getting ready in the morning becomes rote. In fact, if you just look around, the average person is living a mediocre, rote, monotone, routine, colorless, drab, flat life. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. Part of controlling our actions is not simply controlling the flow time actions, but also the fixed time actions. To have the positive attitude in those actions, to reach for a goal in those actions. Here's what we tend to do as entrepreneurs. We tend to think that the time that we control is the only time that matters. And the rest of the time, we kind of just ebb and flow through it. We just try to make it through it so that we can get to what's really important. The truth is, all of our actions are important. When we're sitting in the stands of that game with our kids, it's important. When our friend calls and it's not during our flow time and they just want to chat, hey, that time's super important. Our recreation time is important. And our work time, even if it's at a job that we're not crazy about or working for a boss that we're not in love with, guess what? It's important. because we can't train ourselves to believe that action doesn't matter or that only certain actions matter. We've got to be very alive and alert for everything. Now, we can use some of these things in our fixed time, but this next plan is especially for our flow time. If we want to get the most out of our flow time and control our actions, number one, we need to plan what? Write down exactly what you want or have to do. If it's write an article, create a website, work out, go to work, whatever it is, you need to plan what it is that you have to do today. And you can do this ahead of time as well. Number two, plan when. Set a specific time to do it. 8:15, noon, 7:10. So if I'm going to get up and write an article in the morning, I may plan that for 4:30. So you want to plan what you've got to do, and you want to plan when you are going to do it. It's pretty important. Plan width. How long will the task take specifically? Most of us do not know these numbers. So I want you to start a journal where you record the exact amount of time you spend on specific actions. Then the next time you plan, you'll have a close guess at actual time needed. This is important because what we tend to do is plan in generalities. I'm going to go to the gym for an hour. Is an hour needed? I'm going to write a blog article in 2 hours. Is 2 hours really needed? I'm going to put up a new blog, and that's going to take me half a day. Is half a day really needed? Now, here's the thing. All these times are going to be adjusted because your first time that you're doing a task is going to take longer than a task that you've done over and over and over again. That's super important. So when you plan with how long will this task take, the first time you do that, you don't know. It's an estimate. But the 10th time you've done it, you do know, and it's an accurate. So we want to move from estimates to accurate. How long will this task take? So the first time that you install a blog, it may take you several hours to do that and high-end frustration. And then by the 10th time you do it, it's going to take you about 5 minutes to install a blog using your cPanel. And it's amazing how much you can shrink that time. The first time you write an article for your blog, it may take you 6 hours because you're just like a fanatic and you think it's got to be perfect. And then once you really know what you're about and what your voice is and what your message should be, then your articles may not take 20 minutes. So there's time compression with tasks and activities that we do over and over and over again. And we do a lot of things over and over. Generally, 80 to 90% of what we do over and over and over again. It's not new. Now, as entrepreneurs, we tend to buy new things that distract us and get us in that learning curve again. But what we need to be doing is spending a majority of our flow time on things that we know how to do and then educating ourselves in new areas with a minimum amount of time each week. We still want to grow. We still want to progress. And if we're in a brand new area that requires education, go ahead and pour yourself into the education and then pour yourself into the action as well. Plan width and plan wealth. Create a picture of the result. What will happen when you do this task? Are you one step closer to the weight loss goal, one step closer to a product release, one step closer to impacting lives, one step closer to promotion? So know what the end result and the wealth is going to be when you actually take this step. So you can say, this is what it's going to help me do. So part of life is doing what we have to do when we have to do it as told to us by other people. But when it comes to actions you are in control of, you must be intentional. You have to be focused and get gorilla on the goal. You got to go crazy on it. Approach your actions with aggressiveness. So those steps again, if you're going to control your actions, you got to plan what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how long it's going to take, and how it's going to contribute to your end result and your end goal. Rule number 4, control your reactions. So over there the side is a blow up. Here's a mushroom cloud. And we all have this. We all tend to get upset or get derailed or go crazy from times and things that we thought were going to happen didn't happen the way we wanted them to. So we've been talking about controlling your time, thoughts, and actions, but you can't control everything, and you certainly can't control people. There's no telling what those crazy folks may do. We're not in control of others and their reactions, and I have to be reminded of this lesson all the time. So how are we going to do this? We're going to make advanced decisions. Chances are high that nothing unusual derailed you in the past. Most things can have a premeditated response. You already know 90% of what you'll come up against. So I know when I'm trying to lose weight, I'm coming up against hamburgers and french fries and donuts and bacon. I know that. I'm not surprised by that. So I can have a premeditated response. I can make an advanced decision about it. So think about what you want to accomplish right now, and then write down what you believe you're going to face. So here's what I'm going to face. It's going to be one column. And then over to the right, here's how I'm going to respond. And you write that down. When I face the hamburger, what am I going to do? When I face the donut, what am I going to do? You know, what if I had no implanted in my mind? And when I drive by Krispy Kreme, I'm thinking, no. I know that sounds silly, but what if I'm just thinking about that? What if I ran into Krispy Kreme and shouted no and just ran back out? If I make an advanced decision, then I control my mind ahead of time. I control my thoughts ahead of time, and it allows me to control my reaction. See, if I'm just reacting, something happens, and I just react to it, then I'm at the mercy of that reaction. And it's controlling me. I'm not controlling it. So you need to make a list of things you can come up against, most likely will face, it's not surprising, and then you make your response list of what you're going to do about that. Arrest emotions. When it comes to reacting, more emotion is not better. I was in India a few years ago, and we did not use the right taxi system. There was a line of taxis, but we had a private driver. So we had our driver pull around in front of everybody, and we got in. Well, they recognized this guy as a driver, not as just simply a friend. And he was in an SUV. So they surrounded us. About 20 drivers surrounded us. And they were all speaking in Hindi, and I didn't know what they were saying. The driver, looked like he was nervous. And when we got the interpreter there, the interpreter said that you must use one of these other taxis in line, that he can't cut. They've got to come in order. And that if we will not use the next taxi in line, that they will disassemble the SUV and will disassemble our driver. Now, what if I'd gotten crazy in that moment and started shouting, "I'm an American, you can't treat me this way"? What do you think would have happened? All right. The SUV would have been dismantled and the driver would have been dismembered. So it would have been a bad situation, but we had to arrest our emotions. It's easier said than done, honestly. But when we're trying to install a blog and it doesn't work and we feel frustrated, we're mad, and we feel dumb, and we feel inadequate, it's hard to arrest that, isn't it? Or if we do give in to the donut, it's hard to not feel like we're not going to make it. Or when someone criticizes the progress we have made, it's hard not to get upset about it. So we've got to arrest our emotions and decide, again, this is premeditated, we've got to decide ahead of time that we're not going to go crazy. Number 3, accurate assessment. Don't overreact. I hear people say things like, "I'm a complete failure. I can't do anything right. I never do anything right." Listen, that's insane. That's not even possible. It's not even possible to be a complete failure. It's not even possible to never do anything right. So that's an overreaction. What we need instead is an accurate assessment. And that may be, you know what? I thought I was going to be able to do this, but I don't have the skill set yet. That doesn't mean that we're not going to still be upset and it's not going to still bother us. But it does mean that we don't have to overreact and feel like nothing ever works. But we pull back and say, based on my knowledge, my skill, and my ability, my time and energy and effort, was this thing really even possible? Was I really trying the impossible in this moment? And then we need to back up. We need to make a more accurate assessment. That's why when I said about planning with, How long will this task take? It's important to be able to know those times if you're going to make an accurate assessment of what you're going to do. So we need to pull back when we're controlling our reactions and find out if this is even possible. Now, when have you ever made a solid high emotional decision? And when have you ever made a bad high emotional decision? I think it's pretty easy, right? Most of us make our worst decisions, our bad decisions, we're on those high, raw emotions. But when we're on those high emotions, we rarely make that solid decision, that decision that we really should be making. So we've got to control our reactions. But I want to talk to you about another kind of reaction that will make you very successful. And I call this RAW. I've got an entire course on it, but it's repeated accuracy wins. So another reaction. Once you know how to do things, once you have your skill set, once you know how long those things take, then you can have repeated accuracy and win every time. So that when I know that my blog post takes 20 minutes, guess what? I'm going to sit down, I'm going to bust out 20 minutes, I win. When I know that I'm going to push it hard for 45 minutes in the gym, I do it and I win. When I know that I'm going to get up and I'm going to email my list the first hour of the day, I get up, I do it, I know how long it's going to take, and I win. So we need those repeated wins as well. Over and over and over again, we need to have some tasks that we know when we do them that there's going to be a success. What we tend to do, and this is super dangerous, is we tend to spend all of our time thinking about what didn't work, how we didn't achieve it, how it didn't go the way that we thought it was going to go, and we miss all the things that we can do now that we were never able to do, say 6 months ago or even a year ago. The other thing that we fail to do is to find out what works and then do it over and over and over and over again. So if you had an email campaign that was really pretty successful, why haven't you done that again? If you had a coaching program that you were part of and you achieved some incredible success or made some strides, why aren't you still using that? Why aren't you still part of that? So we need some reactions, some things that work that we do over and over and over and over again. My buddy Jimmy D. Brown is just like the master of this. He's got about 3 things he does in his business. He does it over and over and over again, and repeated accuracy wins. My business, it's very simple, but I do it over and over and over again, so repeated accuracy wins. When you do that, you'll rule your results. Control your time, control your thoughts, control your actions, control your reactions, and you will rule your results. That's my brutally simple system for unreasonable achievement. Go over to paulbevans.com, opt in for my newsletters if you're not already part of that. Apply this training and rule your results. Be blessed.